Yeah. Hey guys, here we are back to episode 4 of Conversations with Kristine van Dooren. I'm Naomi, and here is
Kristine.
hey, my mom.
Hi. Hi. Nice to
I
see
hope you
you.
guys, sorry. We hope you guys have been having fun listening to some more personal insight into Kristine's life and the making of the episode of the podcast, Finding Purpose. And today I have questions, Mom, about the time basically after jail, the early
Okay.
days of what happened after that, because we were talking about the time up till then in our last
Okay.
episode. And yeah, you got out of prison on probation. Tell me a little bit about what you guys had to like. What was it like for you? I know you tell the story in the podcast, and my aim is wanting to know more like what was it like, if like did your parents pick you up from jail, or did you just like walk out and take a bus, or
In California, you do everything with a car. Well,
okay.
most people. Depends on what your lifestyle is.
Yeah.
Um, I was in jail for like 7 or 8 days, and my parents came to pick me up and took me home, then back to their house, which was a very humbling experience because I didn't really want to go back to our flat in Oakland where we got arrested and be there by myself. And Thomas had to stay in jail. I think he was there for 3 weeks because he was a foreigner and he was in the deportation center. And so I stayed with my parents. And then in the meantime, they were talking to the lawyer, making discussions. And then I tell about it in the episode.
Yeah.
But by the time we both got out, my parents picked up then Thomas. I was with him in the car and took him back to our house there in Oakland. And then the discussion was kind of like, okay, here's what we have to do now. I think we had 3 or 4 court hearings because it was different aspects of the problem. He had stolen something. He had marijuana growing in the backyard. We did. He was a foreigner and he lost his passport. So it was a whole series of serious issues.
Oh man.
And so that's why there were different court hearings.
Did you cry like when your parents picked you up, or were you trying not to cry, or and like no?
Not that I remember. It was, I don't know, it wasn't like
But it was
such a big,
humiliating, you said?
well, to go back to their house. I mean, it was very uncomfortable, because we had, I had been living in Berlin already, and then Thomas and I had the apartment in Oakland, so it was like being adult. And now, mommy and daddy are going to have to bail us out of the mess. And I mean, I could have gone home back to Oakland, but I don't even remember specifically, but yeah, that was a
Can't
weird
imagine for your
situation.
parents having to go pick up the guy from jail who put your daughter in jail, and that they paid for everything, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
when
all in the
you guys
story.
got married then, so he wouldn't be deported. That was basically the reason you got married. You didn't take it all too seriously. You say in your podcast that something happened and that it
Oh,
did
yeah.
feel different after you said your
Yeah.
vows. Did you ever later get a ring or something? Because I know you didn't really have wedding rings. Did you guys ever later in life?
What we used for as a ring when we went to the Civic Center in Marin to get married. I mean, I talk about in the podcast, like we didn't invite anybody. We didn't consider it, a wedding.
Yeah.
And it was just like, we need this document so he can stay in the country. And but we had these little rings that were American Indian, a little turquoise stone with a little bird symbol that we had literally picked up in Utah when we were camping with our hippie friends. And so we exchanged those rings. But the most impactful thing that took place was the man who was the, what do you call it, the presiding
The guy who wed
justice
you.
justice of the peace, yeah. So we go in there and we're like, hey, we've got our hippie outfit on. We didn't wear anything particular. It was just like, we're just going to go in and get this paper. He right away, also knowing we're hippies, so thinking, so the hippie ideal is you love each other, you're committed in your heart, you don't need the paper. There's even a song about that from one of the rock groups, like, you don't need the paper. And so he right away said, this is the most important decision you'll ever make. And this is a lifelong commitment. And the most important thing is love. And he just, he was probably like my dad's age. And it was pretty amazing. I mean, because he didn't have to do that. He could have just read, some papers or something. And then the other thing that I think is really something spiritual happens, I don't know, is when we said the vows to each other in front of him, and then there was a woman there too, as a witness, by saying, I'm committing my life for better or for worse. Just that instant, those few seconds in our lives, it really was like, boom, we walked out of there. And I said, I wrote I thought that came to my mind when I was writing the episode, we were on a heavenly high. It was just something came into our hearts and we have committed ourselves. And yeah, it was beyond our understanding, because we thought, we thought the marriage certificate was a joke, basically.
Okay.
So, so the rings then kind of meant something. And then we had this paper. And then the next experience was talking to anybody. You could say, well, this is my husband and this is my wife. I mean, it was all brand new.
Wow. Did you guys ever later in life, and when you were in Germany and the kids were grown up, did you ever have a situation, or maybe before that, where you kind of redid your vows or went on a anniversary or something and kind of felt like it was especially meaningful after that kind of, low-key wedding ceremony in the beginning?
No, like I say, so many things, especially when you're young and our lives, is just like you do it and then on with it. And so much happens in your life. You don't think back. And I mean, we never talked about it, but I found something really interesting in one of the letters that he wrote to his mother saying, we did it, we got married. And he said in the letter, when this is all kind of done, when we're done with all of these court hearings and everything's kind of calmed down, we would like to have a real wedding out in nature and invite our friends and family. And he was even saying to his mother, maybe you could come. I don't remember that conversation at all, but he wrote that to his mother.
But you never did.
We never got around to it, I think, because then I was pregnant, then we got jobs, then we moved to Hayward. There was too many other things going on. But I never missed it. I don't remember having this vision of a bride in a white dress, and I never regretted that we didn't have that kind of a wedding.
I mean, the way you talk about it, it sounds like it was so meaningful on the day in a surprising way that you probably never felt like a need, which is nice. I mean, I also feel growing up as a child, and I was the eldest, so I, was able to see and hear a lot of what was going on at home. I never felt like you guys weren't totally in love and happily married. It was pretty incredible. Let's talk about the baby. About
the baby.
No, I don't mean the baby.
Number one baby.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing of how in the world, I just cannot imagine. Were you running like hitchhiking through Northern California with just a few bags of stuff, planning on having a home birth, without a doctor near you? And also, I'm just even thinking physically, like sitting in somebody else's car and being like highly pregnant. How did you do that? Do you have any like memories of feeling nauseated or wishing you had like a cozy bed, or I don't know. I just
I'm telling you, we were living in the hippie vibe world. When I got pregnant, we went to a woman who was a midwife in Sausalito. They were living on a boat.
oh
And
wow.
so she gave us tips about how to do a home birth. And the thing was, is it wasn't legal then to have a midwife come to your home
Oh,
unless a doctor was there.
okay.
So so no doctor is going to want to do that. So if a midwife did come, it was their risk. So she didn't want to come. And
If he
then
was allowed to have a home birth, that was
yeah,
legal?
you could have a home birth, but
Wow. On
on
your
your own,
own.
basically. And
Wow.
but this is what all the hippies were doing.
Yeah.
And everything back to nature, back to nature. And of
Yeah.
course my parents weren't happy about it, and my mother-in-law wasn't happy about it.
Yeah.
And then but for me it was just totally normal. Like my mother had 3 babies, and I never heard of about anything complications. To me it was just like the American Indians, or people from all over the world that don't live in America.
Yeah.
For centuries,
Natural.
people have been having their babies at home. It's no big deal.
Mhm.
And but at the time, shortly before you were born, when we were in Northern California, someone had transported us up there with our teepee and all of
Yeah.
our belongings. So our teepee was set up, all of our stuff was there. I had a whole box prepared of birth things, and like clean sheets and whatever. And and then we were hitchhiking during that phase.
Is it true, the way I understand it from the podcast and also how you used to tell me in the past, that you literally met the people in whose house you had me that day?
Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine.
Daddy we had the teepee was set up on the mountain overlooking the coast. But we found we couldn't stay there. So he was hitchhiking north, south around the Mendocino area. And this guy, his name was Richard, he picked Daddy up, and somewhere then, I don't know how that worked out, that he knew where this guy lived.
So Thomas, your husband.
Yeah, that this guy Richard, who picked him up, must have been quite near to where our teepee was set up.
Okay.
And so Thomas knew that house was there. That's where Richard lived. It was directly on the highway road,
And
cabin.
he just dropped you off there, right? Like said, you stay with them and I'll go get the stuff and I'll get you later.
Yeah. So because I was feeling really tired, and I mean, I was expecting the birth in maybe 10 days or something. And so he brought me to the door and said, to Richard, would you mind if my wife stays here for a while? I'm going to, pack up the teepee.
Even that, like never in to think that I would leave my girlfriend or my wife pregnant at some foreigner's house in the mountains.
Not a foreigner, another hippie.
Right, but he just meet you. He just met them that day, right?
Well, probably a couple days before that or something.
Oh, okay. Insane. Did you ever were you ever in touch again with them, with Richard and his girlfriend, wife or whatever?
After we ended up living at Living Waters Ranch, Thomas went down and he wanted to talk with them, and he wasn't able to connect with them. I guess Richard wasn't at home or something.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you never saw them again?
No, I mean, he was the one that took Thomas in the first place to Living Waters.
Yeah, I remember.
When we were trying to decide if we wanted to live there. This was like right after you were born. And but after that, and I don't have his last name, or
yeah. Wow.
And he was living there with his girlfriend. So
yeah. Incredible. When you had the baby, like, would you recommend having home births? I know, being your daughter, you had 5 home births. What would you like? I know a lot of girls ask me about it. What would you do? I had my child in the hospital, but I went home the next day because I didn't like it in the hospital.
yeah.
But yeah, what's it like? being at home alone and having your baby? Why did you want to do it at home, and why did you continue with all 5 girls?
Yeah, well, for me, I had never been in the hospital for any reason. To me, and also, in the hippie circles, the hospital was like a cold, impersonal place, which it is kind of. And but the most cozy place is your home, with your family or your husband or whatever. And so I mean, your dad, Thomas, delivered you. I had to tell him what to do.
This is
But then when we came to Germany, all of the other girls, we had a midwife that was in charge of the thing, and that were familiar with doing home births.
do you feel any preference to when you had me in California without a midwife, and then the other births with a midwife? Did the midwife bother you then, or were you glad?
No, yeah, I don't. Well, each midwife kind of has their style, the way they want to do things, and the advice they give or don't give or whatever. And so you kind of have to go with, if you're going to be cooperative.
Deal with it, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was nicer, a little bit more relaxing having the midwife, because I was kind of like the midwife when you were born. I mean, I was telling him what to do.
Did you guys like fight? Did you like argue, or you like screaming at him? You have to do
No,
this. Ah!
no.
And was he cooperative?
Yeah. I mean, he was, in kind of a state of shock, because he almost drowned that day.
Can you
So
believe it?
he wasn't in a normal state of mind anyway.
As if he didn't have enough adventure on one day. I mean, imagine if he would have really drowned that night and wouldn't have, ended up on the other side of the ocean. Be sure to listen to the podcast and get the whole story if you haven't heard it yet. But then you would have been an unwed mother, and I would have been your only child.
Oh, yeah. That's a weird thought.
Or if you guys would have stayed in jail, or he would have been deported, there would have never been.
I was going to go with him.
You would have gone with him?
I told him I would go with him back to
Your parents
Germany.
would have loved that too. And then I also wanted to ask you, just because, later in the podcast, we're going to hear that you guys moved from the States to Germany. That's still kind of in the future, right? But what would interest me kind of in closing of this episode, what do you miss? You've been living in Germany now for all these years. What do you miss about the States? I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of things you could say about that, but is there anything maybe particular that comes to mind?
I think the main thing for me personally is just being able to freely communicate with people.
Yeah.
Because of the language, that I don't have second thoughts of like, did I say it wrong, or I'm not using the wording I would use in English. But the biggest thing that took me years to realize after being here, that communicating with people, it's not just about learning their language. For me, learning the German language it's a whole way of thinking, mentality, and their families and their families, and everything in the culture plays so much into it. And that's what I miss. Like, I think the mentality, in a way, kind of like relaxed and super friendly. And, in Germany, Americans, and my father is German, is known as they're very genau. Everything is very genau. Everything needs to be just like this.
The way it needs to be.
And my dad, when he would come visit, he's like, oh, I thought these Germans were so smart, like what? But it was different than what he thinks he had learned. But yeah, I mean, generally the Americans have a laid back, relaxed, personal, you can talk to a stranger at the supermarket and tell them your whole life story of what the doctor just told you, or what the man at the bank just told you, or, the fight you just had with your mother. I mean,
Yeah.
And here you stand in line at the counter and nobody says a word,
Yeah.
not even hardly hello.
Yeah. Trying to not make eye contact and
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, a lot has changed. I mean, so much has changed since when I first came here. English is much normal, and also because of the internet,
Yeah.
people use all kinds of American English words,
Yeah.
and people, German people love to go to America. They love America.
Yeah. And what do you like about Germany? Because you're still here. There must be at least one thing, or I don't know.
Oh, there's lots of things. I think I kind of like the genau, that there's not too many, well, I don't like too many rules, but
Yeah.
um everything is very clean and orderly, whether it's the streets or the housing or the shops.
Yeah.
You don't see junk, any type of junk on the streets or
Yeah.
gardens or anything like that. Everything's kind of clean and beautiful. And what I love is the people, because I've been here a long time, and I know some of the history, and also the history of my mother-in-law, experiencing the war herself in West Berlin, that I
Yeah.
have a lot of compassion and sympathy and love for the German people for all that they have had to endure.
Oh, wow. 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 Well, thank you for opening up once again, sharing a little bit more about your crazy experiences. And just for our listeners, thank you for taking the time. And remember to subscribe to Kristine van Dooren's podcast, Finding Purpose, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And also you can follow her on Instagram. Her name is Van Dooren Kristine, where you can see lots of pictures that go with the story and all those memories. And we look forward to having more conversations with Kristine van Dooren in the future. So keep your eyes open for that. And God bless you. And God bless you, Mom. Thank you so much for sharing from your life. And yeah, is there anything else you want to say while we say goodbye in closing?
Oh, no, it's fun talking to you. I mean, also because you helped translate my book, you, of anybody in the family, know the whole story. But of course, there's a lot more personal things involved that aren't in the book. And so, yeah, so it's fun to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially me being a mom now too, and a daughter, and having my daughter the age that you were when you were experiencing all these adventures. Well, okay, we'll let you guys go. All the best. Take care.
Okay, bye for now.